This is 24 in 42. Welcome to 24 in 42, where we get to learn the life, universe, and everything of a particular author, and today it is Logan Whitney. Logan and I have had the pleasure actually to work together a few times. This is the first time, and I hold these. I'll present these better in the video, but this is the first book he joined me in. This is the third book he wrote. He joined me in, and this has an awesome sword and six gun story in it. But this is the one that's fun because not only did he write for it, he did this cover, which happens to be my wife's favorite cover of all my books.
Oh, thank you.
So Logan, tell us what you write and a little bit about you.
Oh man, so I write under LD Whitney and also JD Wicks, although nothing's been published. I'm an educator, an archaeologist, and an author. I do all kinds of things. I write thrillers. I write sword and sorcery. I write nonfiction, historical, Western stuff as well.
Cool.
So.
All right. I look forward to learning more about that. All right. I think the audience might be getting used to this now, but I give the author 16 out of 24 questions so that we don't really waste time on the deep ones, make them think on the spot. Then the other 8 are sort of tongue-in-cheek, but seeking to learn a little bit more about our guest here. So we will start our timer. Number 1, what color do you write in?
Black and white on the screen.
That's starting to become a frequent answer, but
yeah. Just type it right on the screen.
All right. Now into your writing. How do you give depth to a character, and do you treat characters like first, second, and third differently?
Man, when I read this question, it's tough. Because to be completely honest, I think plot is my favorite part. Characters, I don't want to call them one-dimensional, but they're less three-dimensional than like a typical author might have. Like, the point of my stories is typically the action and the adventure and the plot twists.
Okay.
And my reading is the same. Like, I typically look at plot first. I guess I treat people like people when I think about how a person might react in the situation, no matter how outlandish, and that's kind of where their character comes from.
Okay. You are a rarity in my experience because I'm a character guy.
Sure.
Most readers are. I teach a character class once a month, so it's interesting to talk to people.
I should probably take it, tell you the truth.
I find it very interesting, though, to talk to authors like yourself who write and read with a concentration on plot and/or setting. So it begs the question then: a traumatic, a car accident, just nothing being chased, no guns being fired, just a simple car accident. How do you make characters react differently? Because we'll all react in some different fashion.
Sure. So I guess my default is to think about my past experience. Like, I guess I've never been in a terrible car accident, but I have been in a couple, like, more than fender benders, right? If we're using this scenario. Mm-hmm. And I think back to like how me and people around me reacted, and I try and like put that into words on the paper.
Okay.
I think people watching is my biggest like character study.
There you go.
Yeah,
very true. All right, did you grow up in the city or the country? And when you planed out your when you played out your fantasy adventures or all your adventures, did you do it by yourself or did you have some friends?
Great question. I grew up, I guess it was small town. I suppose it wasn't quite country because it was, 2,000 people is pretty small compared to like where I live now. But my parents also own a farm in Kansas. I grew up in Nebraska. It was fairly rural. Most of my adventures, I think I had friends. The year I learned to ride a bicycle was like my first taste of freedom, because like it's a small town, you can trust most people know your family, and you can just ride around and do whatever without any real fear, unlike where I live now. So
this unfortunately is becoming a common thread.
Yes. Did
you have any grand armies or fortresses in the woods or anything?
Oh, yeah. So across the street from our house, there's this older lady, and she had like this like clutch of trees right next to her, and my friends and I built like a fort out of like some old like I assume barn timbers in the back, and she'd catch us and yell at us
Oh,
sometimes. But yeah,
did you ever tear it down?
no, she was too old to do that.
Okay.
She just didn't want us there.
um, all right. When you're working on a project, from initial idea to possibly any research, especially since you have a little historical fiction in there, first draft, and when you finally say this is good, I'm either going to publish it or submit it. What's that sort of look like?
Oh man, it's so short.
Really?
I told Matt one time, and I think he disagreed. If I'm referencing Matt, it's the other host of Rogues in the House podcast. But I don't make art; I pull triggers. That's what I said.
Interesting.
So like, I will have my idea, and probably within 6 days, I will have a final draft. And if I'm generous, I'll have another 48 hours before I hit the submit button.
Dang.
Um, yeah, I mean, obviously, longer works take longer, like a
Right.
novel length thing. Um, which novels I have a harder time because, like, I go through and edit chapter by chapter as I go, and I think
Okay.
Scott Oden mentioned the other day that he did that too. And the final product is basically the last word I
Clean.
write.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So how much editing does a short story get? Do you do it as you write?
Um, Typically I like to the short stories I typically break down into like 3 to 5 like sections. I'll finish a section, I'll review the section, make any changes. um if it's lucky, it gets sent to a couple of people who will like look over it
Okay.
and give me suggestions, and I sometimes I integrate them, sometimes I don't,
Right. Yeah.
and that's it. Yeah.
So I want to ask then specifically about this sword and six gun story. How long did
Yeah,
that
yeah.
take? Do you remember writing that?
It was done in about a week. It was done in
Really?
about a week. Yep.
That's a
No, no,
very that's an excellent story.
thank you. It is one of my favorite stories that I've ever written. The I suppose since it is take place in like a historical time period, it'd take a little research. Like I had to learn about some World War I weapons and
Okay.
like the different people involved in different geographical locations, right? But overall, like the idea was in my head, and I just kind of run with it.
I'm envious. I get to do
Yeah,
that maybe once a year where I can just
sure,
do
sure.
that. So when you're writing, what assails your ears?
uh, Silence.
Okay.
I don't know if I actually like have like ADHD or whatever, but I have a really really difficult time focusing without silence. So like, I mean, I just had a kid. Silence is not a thing that I have a lot, so I really have to hammer it when I get the opportunity. If I'm not sleeping. But yeah, I can't focus when there's music. I know some people it really helps. It's a hindrance to me.
Okay. Has
Yeah.
your schedule changed with the baby now of
Oh
when you
my
can
God.
write?
Oh my. Yes. It's changes about every week.
Yeah.
She just turned 3 months, and I think she's going through a little bit of that sleep regression. So now she stays up to like 1 in the morning instead of like 11. So my world got turned upside down again.
Have you ever dictated a story?
I've tried. But I guess when I speak, obviously you can hear me speak, I like pause a lot and think about and say like and and it doesn't quite come out on the paper like I want it to. So typing is just for the best for me, I
Okay.
think.
Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
If you could follow the yellow brick road, would you?
Specifically to Oz.
I don't know.
That's fair. That depends. I guess, if we're talking specifically to Oz, no, because I think that's like a Lovecraftian nightmare. Um, Willy Wonka, Mary Poppins, Wizard of Oz are horror movies. They are not family-friendly children's movies. But if I found a yellow brick road in the real world, yes, I would probably follow it just to see what's at the other end. If I saw any Munchkins, I'm turning around though.
Or winged apes. So, of all the characters you've created, who would you like to hang out with as a close friend?
Oh, that's so tough. Because I mean, it's tough because most of them are me, and I hang out with me all the time. Um, I suppose I'd have to go. I guess with my first novel, Adeline Price is the main character. She's just like she's basically a cryptozoologist. It's and going on adventures and exotic locations and traveling is like a real world passion of mine.
Okay.
And I've never ran into a Bigfoot or anything, but I would want to if I had the chance.
And what's the name of your first book?
It is called Remnant, and it's available on Amazon in every format you could want. Published by Primal Press.
Excellent. Is there
Yep.
going to be a sequel?
Oh man, a long time ago there was, and I have like a draft that I just didn't fall in love with, and then I, got caught up in other things, and I just kind of left it. It's been so long, I don't know if anyone's clamoring for a sequel. I
Okay.
suppose there would be spiritual successors,
Yeah.
but an actual sequel, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you've already alluded to this because you write historical stuff and you do a little bit of research. But what kind of nonfiction do you enjoy reading, and anything
Um.
currently?
Gosh. I'm so bad with names. But there's an author who does a lot of historical fiction. Or not historical nonfiction about the West, I should say. He just recently had a book on Texas Rangers.
Oh,
Gosh,
Colvin, I think.
yes, that's it. That's
Yeah.
correct. And I really like his historical work. Um, Most of my nonfiction is geared towards Western history. I read a lot of like True West magazine, especially the old ones, which is kind of a blend of fiction and reality, like they did in the old magazines. Um, J.C. or no W.C. Jameson has this excellent series of like lost mines and buried treasures that I'm just absolutely in love with. So
And you turned some of that into your podcast.
I have, yes, yeah. That-
Is there more scripts coming for that someday?
Oh man, there are. I just recently finished one. So ostensibly, it's about a vampire sighting in South Dakota, but really, it's about the spread of yellow journalism in the 1800s.
Interesting.
Yeah. So,
All right. Toss the name out of your podcast.
it is Mysterious West podcast. I think there's only like 5 episodes right now, but yeah, it exists.
It does. I'm writing things down. That's why I'm always looking down.
Sure.
All right. Titles. Do you find them challenging? Do they come easy? And when do they come? Beginning, end, after it's all done? First thought?
Usually, the story starts with the title. I feel like the title is the heart, the concept. If you can find a few juicy words for a short story, and that's the hook, I guess, for me. Thrillers are a little different because like it's a different audience, right? Um, they're not necessarily looking for like the pulpy purple
Yeah.
title, um, so that can have a little leeway, but ultimately I think the title comes first for me.
Okay.
It just gives me the seed to grow the idea.
Have you, how frequently would you say you change it? Or do you after a story's done?
Gosh, I don't think I've ever changed a title after the story is done.
Okay.
Tell you the truth, yeah.
This has been a fascinating question. If you get a chance to watch the series when it's live,
I will, yeah, I
everyone's
totally will.
answer to this one is, I find titles. I don't think they're challenging, but I'm with you, where they're very, at least in short stories, they're very key. They play together, and I want my story to reflect back to the title and the title to the story. So, but I've changed them. I've tweaked them.
Sure.
All right. Bread breakfast. What are you going with? Waffles, French toast, pancakes, crepes, or bagels?
Waffles are pancakes, but better because they're crispy.
Just make crispy pancakes then.
That's fair. I probably could have, if that was an option, maybe I would have chosen that, but you didn't say
I
it.
didn't say that. I flummoxed my mother-in-law one time. I like my pancakes nice and golden,
Sure, sure.
and thicker and fluffy. Well, she came one time and made them and served these flat discs that were all brown, and I must have said, "Where's the golden ones?" Because this has stayed in the family for 30 years, and she still
Sure,
doesn't
sure.
understand what a golden pancake is.
Uh,
Would you live in any of your worlds? Which and why?
um, gosh. Um, I guess in a way, I live in one now. Um,
Like it.
I like I said, a lot of what I write is based off my interests and my own experiences. Albeit a little fictional. Like, yeah, like monsters don't exist in the real world, but there are stories of monsters in the real world, and there are people that go out and try and find them.
Yeah.
And my fiction is just the next logical leap to that, as far
Okay.
as like my thrillers go. And I guess if the world was a wee bit more fantastical, I'd be right there.
Yeah. Okay. That's the guys that you all that write historical adventures get that nice overlap where you're
Yeah,
currently in that world and you're tweaking it a little bit. Yeah.
yeah, totally. I've been reading some like old pulp adventures, and it's so fascinating to think because like a lot of these guys were veterans of various wars, Korea, World War II, Vietnam, even depending on the era, and like they wrote about places and people they saw and lived, which I think really gives those older pulps an authentic vibe, right? Like
Yeah.
Lewis L'Amour lived many of his stories.
Yep.
And that's kind of a rarity today, I think, in fiction. So there's like a novelty to that
Yeah.
in the older stuff.
Understood.
Yeah.
I find that very appealing also. So that leads us nicely into who do you think writes the characters you enjoy reading most?
Yeah.
And I know you're a plotter guy, but there's got to be
Sure, sure,
characters
sure.
that
No,
appeal to you.
definitely. I think my most appealing character, which is going to pop up, this author's going to pop up in a few of your questions, um, is it's a pair of characters, Dirk Pitt and Al Giordino from Clive Cussler, who writes adventure thrillers. He kind of set out to start like his own modern take on Doc Savage, which is also something James Rollin does. Um, but Dirk and Al have this like best buds friendship where no matter the circumstances, how like harrowing they may be, there's always jokes. And I know a lot of like when I sub to places, they're like, try to keep the wit down because it's never witty. And I think that attitude detracts, right?
Okay.
Like, I mean, I don't think you ever put it on your sub guidelines, but I think in the last 3 or 4 places I've subbed, like they're like, don't try and be witty. Like, yeah, maybe it doesn't land every time, but like people do that in their normal conversation.
Right.
No one's 100% dour all the time.
Yeah, even the dry guy. You know what? I
Yeah, yeah.
mistook your subbed. I thought you meant subbed as in substitute taught at other
Oh
schools.
no,
That's
sorry.
even
No,
funnier.
submission. Yeah, submission for fiction. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's funny. That makes sense.
uh, Anybody else? Or are you gonna stick with Clive?
No, I think I'm gonna stick with Clive. Clive
Okay,
and Dirk and Al. Yep,
perfect.
they're my favorite characters.
So that writing class I told you about, it's a character creation class. If I invited you to come guest speak there, but you were only allowed one sentence of writing advice, what would you say to the class?
Write people like people.
Excellent.
I mean, obviously, I wouldn't be able to do this in your class given the restrictions, but I think people are nuanced and varied. And as much as like I'm on board with like archetypal characters like Conan, who pretty much, have the one mood and that's their thing. And like we hear about melancholies and mirth, but we really just see kill things. Like that's fine. I don't hate it. But most people in reality don't live that way.
Yeah.
And I think people are interesting characters. So, emulate people as best you can.
Good point. Yep. Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of the class. I have some, regular writers, but most of them are trying to be writers
Sure.
or wrote years ago and want to get back to it again. So explaining how to give depth to characters. So they're different. They're not all the same.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is the best thing you think you have ever spent money on to further your writing?
Um, the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown.
Really?
Yeah, it was the most eye-opening, enlightening book for my own writing that I'd ever read. Um, Dan Brown, I mean, a lot of people roll their eyes at Dan Brown. He's obviously no Cormac McCarthy, but he does break a lot of conventions like Cormac McCarthy does.
Okay.
What really got me, the biggest lesson is that a chapter only needs to be as long as it needs to be. Um, some of his chapters in books are like 2 sentences long,
Yeah.
and it gets the point across. The sentences are straight and to the point, and yeah, some people might find that dry, but there is no living author that I know that has better pacing than Dan Brown, and
Okay.
it lends its and the way he writes lends itself to that. So there you go.
Cool answer. All right. Which I got to stop saying. I say all right in these interviews all the time.
No.
All right. So do you think it makes it more difficult for you as a writer if or easier if you feel emotion strongly?
um, so I would say more difficult. I typically try to avoid like super like tug at your heart kind of stuff, mostly because like I'm an easy crier. And like I will get myself choked up talking about emotional stuff. If you happen to listen to Mysterious West, it was initially conceived because my grandfather was in hospice and I wasn't able to be there. So I wanted him to have something to hear me
Oh,
while I was, or while he was there. And the episode where he passed away, I believe, is the last episode I made. I have a little dedication to him, and it took me a long time to like actually speak it because it's difficult. Like I'm a fairly emotional person. But yeah, so I mean, obviously, it lends to good characters, and people connect with that stuff. It's just something that I haven't quite grown in my comfortableness of writing yet, I think.
sure.
So,
Wait till your little girl's a little bit older
oh,
and suddenly you're
oh, I
very
know.
emotional.
Yeah, I listen to a lot of country music, and a song on the radio came on. It was like "Don't Blink." I
Yeah.
can't remember the artist because I'm bad at names, but then like it was just on the way home from work, and like it made me emotional. I'm like, Jesus.
I was just talking to a mom in the bookstore yesterday, and it's for parents as soon as they have that little girl. As soon as you have a kid, but it always seems to be a little girl. All of a sudden, things
Sure.
that never triggered you before. Oh.
Yeah, totally. Ugh.
All right. What are three or were three of your favorite books as a child, pre-18?
Okay, so I had to look some up because there. So the first one, the very first book that like got me into reading was a young adult version of Inca Gold by Clive Cussler. That was the very first chapter
Okay.
book I read and purchased on my own. Um, I also read Gary Paulson. Everyone knows Hatchet. He also wrote like a sci-fi book called The Transall Saga, which is still very Hatchet, but it's about a kid who gets transplanted to like another planet and has to survive, right? So same themes as Gary Paulson, but I loved that book as a kid.
Okay.
And then actually when I was 12, I read the book was like the actual paperback was called At the Mountains of Madness by H.P.
Yeah.
Lovecraft, but it also had like I think 4 other stories in it
Okay.
besides that one, and that was also one of my favorite books as a kid, pre-18.
Okay. Now that YA version of Inca Gold. So that was a while ago. I didn't know they were making YA versions of those.
So yeah, so there were only two. There was Inca Gold and Shockwave, and I had both, and they must
Okay.
not have been that successful. But there was a Barnes and Noble that opened up in the nearest big city to us, and every time we went grocery shopping, my mom would let me go and look at the books and maybe pick one out, right?
Yeah.
And I saw that, and the back of it and the cover, right, like just really
Yeah.
drew me in. So
Dang, and so that started the Clive Kleshler and all the
Yeah. Well, now I own every book.
yeah.
So
So I didn't know about Paulson's Transall,
yeah,
Transall.
Transall.
Okay.
I had to
Okay.
look it up because I couldn't remember it. I remember the cover distinctly, but a kid is going hiking in Arizona and like he sees this beam of light. I think he like falls and he falls into this beam of light and is transported to like another planet,
Huh.
kind of like John Carter esque.
Yeah.
But it's very cool for a young adult book.
And I can totally see these two books definitely influenced you.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
started
yeah.
a path.
Yes.
So what worries you most? Lava, quicksand, monasteries, or sharks?
Man, oh, that's a good question. Um, Monasteries, I think. I think I have a natural distrust of various kinds of authority, and I feel like that always not always right, but people that are so incredibly sure of themselves scare me, and
Okay.
that like nothing can be swayed. Like, yes, there are probably some immovable stances that I have, but I'm never 100% sure of myself. And
Okay.
people who are scare me.
Interesting. Okay.
Quicksand is a way less of a threat than everyone thought it was going to be when I was a kid.
That is true. And lava, you just need pillows thrown across the floor.
Yes, yeah, there you go. Easy. Done. I got pillows.
All right, you're all done writing for the day. Are you exhausted, need a hot bath and a good drink, or are you pumped and ready to rumble and get out of the house?
I think get out of the house usually. It's a necessity to be in front of the computer, both like at my job and while writing. And I really value time away from it, even though like a lot of the time you can still feel the pull back to the screen. Um, but uh, but yeah, I gotta get up, stretch, get some sun, get some fresh air.
Yep,
That's my go-to.
hear that. I wrote, I resisted the computer for a long time when I started. I used handwritten, and then the transition from writing to the screen was my first round of editing. But can't do that anymore.
Sure, sure, yeah.
So, depending on how personal you want to get, what is the most difficult thing you've ever written?
Difficult thing I've ever written. Um, you know, like I said, I don't typically go super personal in my fiction. I think the most difficult thing that I've ever written was my novel Ruminant, because I'd never done it before. I didn't plot it. It just kind
Okay.
of came out. I don't typically plot things very heavily even now, if even if I have an outline. And dedicating yourself to a longer work, even a novella, is very difficult. Like
Mm-hmm.
it takes dedication. And my mind likes to switch gears a lot. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
so,
Understood.
so yeah.
You've is that the only one you finished, or have you on trucked
That
ones?
is the only one I finished. Mostly due to like I have a hard time setting like good habits and schedules. I need to like have a schedule to stick to it, and I just life throws you monkey wrenches consistently, and I don't adapt all that well.
Yeah.
So yeah.
We both need a schedule, brother.
Hmm. I get it.
All right. Here's a free for all. If you could write someone else's character from any medium, no strings attached, who and why?
I mean, I think we've talked about this before. I would write El Borak by Robert E. Howard. Um, I am anxious. I'm I'm hopeful that the new, I think it releases in September, which is my birth month. So
Nice.
that's a little birthday present to me.
Yep.
I'm hopeful that it's good. Um, but I think a lot of people. So to me, the draw is like the spies and the tribal stuff and like the historical part of it.
Sure.
And I know because he exists ostensibly in a world with Robert E. Howard's other characters, there's always like a draw to throw something supernatural in there. But I think that's a disservice to the character and the time period he exists in.
Yeah.
And I would want to stay true to that. Yeah.
And it blends. It seems to blend well, outside the supernatural, a lot of the things you already like to read and write.
Yes, 100%.
And it's sort of a precursor to, a lot of the movies that we enjoy, the
Oh yeah.
Sahara and the Mummies, and I mean,
hmm
okay, supernatural
And
there,
Indiana
but
Jones, but
yeah,
still, yeah,
yeah,
no, you
yeah,
get it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, totally.
Cool. All right, 10 first thoughts. I'm going to throw out a word, and I want your first reaction. Western.
It's The Searchers.
Serpent.
Uh, Evil.
Box.
Brad Pitt.
Nice. Raspberry.
Jam.
Hawk.
Uh, gosh, Natty Bumpo.
I don't follow that one.
The main character of the Leather Stocking Tales is Hawkeye, I believe.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Fist.
Iron.
Patience.
Don't have it.
Dystopian.
Misunderstood.
Cool. Voyage.
The Dream.
And for you, Monk.
Infuriating. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite quote, and will you share it with us? And I will be
do.
putting these on the screen. So,
My favorite quote, I had to pull it up because I want to say it word for word,
good.
is oh, come on now. There it is. The trail is the thing, not the end of the trail. Travel too fast and you miss all you are traveling for. And Louis L'Amour said that in his biography of a wandering man.
Nice.
So
I love the quote, and I love who you're quoting. We've talked about him before too. We both
yes.
read him quite a bit and enjoy his characters. All right. I'm sorry. Did you send me that? Can you send it to
No,
me the exact
I
wording?
can.
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to reword this one because a lot of people have been stuck on the word favorite. What I'm asking here is which visual artist or artists move you? What are the pieces, the works that instead of saying favorite,
Sure.
what moves you? Who moves you?
So I mean, my favorite artist is Albert Bierstadt, who I was talking to Chuck and Seth Lindbergh the other day about. He was the primary figure in the Hudson Valley School of Landscape Art, and like he sought to. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat. He sought to depict the divine in nature. So it's a lot of like landscapes that are real American landscapes. Eventually it would become the Rocky Mountain School, and you'd get things like the Grand Canyon and the Sierra Nevadas. It's a lot of like mountains with like glowing light behind it. And I guess I'm not a religious person, but wilderness is the closest to holy I've ever experienced.
Okay.
And that's what I told Seth the other day, and that really connected with me. I do like art. I'm good enough at it for some things, but the detail in Bierstadt and his followers is just grand, I guess.
Cool.
Yeah.
And it totally speaks to your inner core.
Yes.
I forgot to preface you weren't allowed to pick yourself, so thank you.
Sure, yeah, no problem.
That sounds like it would have been an interesting conversation, you and Chuck and Seth.
Yeah, I think Seth posted something on Facebook, and I just kind of went off. But I also really like Frederick Remington, who's like the most famous of like the Western artists. But there's a few others, I just like the depiction of the romance and stuff like that. So.
All right, I'll throw them both in, but yeah,
sure,
definitely. We are 33 minutes, and you only have one question left, so you can take as long as you want on this, or I'll have to wing some. What are you trying to share in your writing, if anything?
That's an excellent question. I think my main motivator is that there is still adventure to be had in the world. Um, as a history teacher, geography teacher for middle school, right? Um, a lot of my kids come to the table thinking that everything's been discovered, that they can go to Google Maps and see like the furthest away of places and that nowhere's worth visiting. And that's simply not true.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, we all know that Google Maps kind of just like fills in spots that it can't quite get. But there's always something to find, no matter how small, I guess. Um, so I'm from the prairie, right? And it's mostly just flat grassland. And if we're lucky, there's a rolling hill. Um, but the key is finding the beauty in those small things. Down at the grass level, right? And it's easy to appreciate a view from a mountaintop or a view of a mountain from below, but everything's an adventure if you choose to make it so.
Right.
And I think that's the most important thing.
Good. Excellent point. And even in those prairies, once you get to know them, there's dips and
Oh yeah,
just hidden things that you don't see unless you look.
exactly. And I mean, I touched on it earlier. Like, there's a draw to be on a screen, right? I think we all struggle with it, especially people like us who want to promote work and other people's work and stuff like that. That's just the nature of the game now. But you got to look beyond the screen, beyond your yard, and get to places that maybe make you feel a little uncomfortable or a little difficult, right?
Yeah.
That's where the good stuff is.
Yeah. I love that. That sounds cool that you're, yeah, I like that. It's not a hard message, but in all of your adventures, you're sharing adventures and that there's more to
Yeah,
come.
I just think people need to get outside. They need to meet other people, do things that are outside their comfort zone a little bit. I think the world would be a better place.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah.
And you're not too far away from Texas, so one of these days you might
No,
show up
no.
at Howard Days.
Oh yeah, my wife is from Texas. Well, she's from Mexico, but she grew up in Dallas.
Okay.
And she has family there,
Oh,
and
good.
as you likely know, it's difficult to raise a child without family around, and we don't have anyone here. So I mean,
Uh,
we're looking to move that way so we can be near grandma and aunt and uncle and everything, so they have a little more help. And I grew up, at 18, you got out of the house, right? That's kind of like our culture.
yep.
But Chanel and her family are very, very close knit. And
Family.
like, I know that it wears on her not being around her family all the time. So, like, that's important to me that.
Right.
So, we'll probably find ourselves there, and then I'll be much closer to Howard Days. So,
Oh, yeah. Spitting
yeah,
distance.
yeah.
David Hardy and Aaron Cummins, I think is his last name. They're
Yeah,
both they
yeah.
both come
Yep.
from
And
there. Yeah.
I think Aaron's around Amarillo, and we drive through Amarillo at least twice a year going to Dallas. So,
My
uh,
mother-in-law
you know,
lives in Amarillo, so
um,
yeah. Okay.
no, so it'll be an adventure. I've lived a lot of places. I think that's probably why, um, I'm drawn to like the idea of travel. I used to work for the State Department in DC. I lived in Virginia. I lived in Maryland, Nebraska, Kansas, Arizona. Here, why not just add
Dang.
Texas to it too?
Yeah.
So, you know.
And you're one of the young ones in this crowd. You've been all
Oh
over.
yeah. I think it's interesting. There's so few of us that live, I don't know, west of the Mississippi. At least as far as I can tell. I know like you're Texas, Aaron's Texas. There's a guy on the Whetstone Discord that's in Las Vegas, Nevada, and then there's me, and
Yeah.
that's about it. Everyone's on the East Coast.
Nils, Black Cavalier Nils is in
That's
California.
okay. Okay, there you go. There's another one. Yeah. So I just think it's interesting. I mean, obviously, that's where a lot of big cities and stuff are in the East.
Yeah.
But like people are like, why don't you ever go to conventions and stuff? Well, because it's like
Yeah.
$500 plane ticket and 1,000 miles away. You
Yeah,
know?
and $500 to get in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So,
When I first started, a lot of the authors in my first two books were actually Pacific Northwest, and I was starting
oh,
to
that's
think
interesting.
almost of moving there. But like four of them were in the same. The biggest event I ever set up that I never attended, Powell's out in
Sure, sure.
Seattle. I got 4 authors, and one of them worked at Powell's, hosted an event. I got Michael Ehart, Jeff Draper, and Jeff Stewart, and Alan Lloyd, who worked there, to do a
Wow,
4 author event. I made posters. I sent it out there.
that's
No,
crazy.
nobody came. Nobody
Oh,
came. Best event I ever put together.
I I've read that a couple times. Like, and I mean, it's a learning experience, right? As an
Yeah.
author, you're always trying to do these things, and some things work and some things don't.
Yep.
And there are communities that are very interested in like local authors, and there are others that aren't.
Yep.
I've attended a couple local author things here, just when I have the time, right? Because like someone's got to.
Right.
And like I'm like one of 2 or 3 people there, which sucks. Um, but you know,
Yep.
everything's a learning experience.
Showing a little support, and if you
Yeah.
actually like that material, then you get private time.
Right,
You
right,
get
right. Yeah, it's
sometimes
a
you get
whole
to
other
go grab
thing.
a burger.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna call it at 39 and a half. Excellent. We covered
See,
a
I
lot of
was
ground.
trying real hard not to go long, and then I went short. That's how it goes.
I enjoyed our conversation, and I wasn't
Yeah.
paying a whole lot of attention because I thought we were flowing well. And then I'm like, oh, we need to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We did good. And now you get as much time as you would like to talk about something in your work that's cold, something current, and something coming.
Man, so something that's cold. I mean, cold because it's been sitting out a long time. I think, and it's admittedly in my very first like book. It's a novice, but I think if you like adventure and you are not adverse to like contemporary settings, because it is just now,
Okay.
I think you should check out Remnant. It's got action, adventure, monsters, all that stuff.
All right.
I know Primal Press, the people who published it, they specialize in like creature feature books. So even if you don't choose like pick up Remnant, there are a lot of creature features that press puts out, and their heart's really in it for a small publisher. So check out that.
Cool.
Contemporary. Go check out Book of Blades Volume 3. Volume 1 continues to sell very well. But as a lot of authors, I think, see, the newer releases get fewer reviews.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, right? Backlogs, people lose interest, people don't see it. I don't know. But go check out Book of Blades Volume 3. I think we pulled out all the stops that we could for this. We paid more. We got less but higher quality interior art. I hate to say higher quality because everyone's art is great, right? We just paid more for it, so
Okay.
I guess you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And then upcoming, gosh, I have both a sword and sorcery collection that I'm going to put out through
Oh.
Rogues in the House Presents. And then I will also have another thriller novel very soon.
Okay.
Another action adventure thriller in the vein of Clive Cussler, if you can imagine that.
Imagine that. You doing that through Rogues in the House too? Or
No, it'll probably just be me.
okay.
Just because like I want to keep it's not that I don't think people won't be interested. It's just that I want to keep sword and sorcery the focus, right?
Okay.
There will
Yeah.
also be a physical version of Mysterious West
Oh.
out.
Cool.
So I've taken the scripts
Okay.
at the suggestion of Dean Geiken, who
Yeah.
is on the Rogues in the House. I took the scripts, printed them, put some pictures in, and then added some stuff that's new. So it's not just a repeat, but there will be a physical version of Mysterious West by J.D. Wicks.
Excellent. That sounds cool. So I got two comments.
Yeah,
If you happen to get covers, especially of the Sword and Sorcery collection, feel free to send that to me
sure, sure.
so that I can include that in here. Um, but I want to circle back to that Sword and Sorcery collection because I know in ongoing conversations over the years, you're more the sword and six gun guy. Actually, you're more the Alborak guy than a straight sword and sorcery guy. So why a sword and sorcery collection?
Um, because I wanted to try.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Like obviously Rogues in the House is like very sword and sorcery centric. I wanted to stay that way. I wanted to stay with the theme. Um, I think for me, I also wanted to kind of present something that I guess I didn't see much of as
Okay.
like a thing. So this is very like Fritz Lieber esque.
Huh. Okay.
Um, it's a little more, I guess. It's not tongue in cheek. It's not satire, but I find it humorous, and the couple people who have read some of the stories also find them humorous.
Okay.
So like it's just something different. And like I chip away at it. It takes me about, like I said, a week to do a story, and then I'll revise it later. And it'll be a very slim little paperback, kind of like To Walk on Worlds that Matt
Okay.
produced.
Yeah.
So
Nice.
yeah.
Are you doing the cover yourself?
No, no, no. I haven't actually got a cover artist yet. I don't
Okay.
know what kind of style. It's so hard, right? Like, obviously, you want to get the Frazetta esque, right? Or like those
Yeah.
old watercolor paintings, but people don't do that anymore. And like, you also don't want to just like steal the same artist that another person used. Like, you know, I don't want to have a book that looks just like Matt's book,
True.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah.
More
But
your
yeah,
style, more distinctly you. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, cool. Thank you for sharing all that with us and
Yeah, yeah,
spending
yeah, of
this
course.
time letting us get to your heart and learning everything about your universe.
No, yeah, it's a real pleasure.
So wonderful. Thank you, Logan.
Yeah, yeah.
My thanks to Logan for sharing the everything of his life and universe with 24 in 42. As our first plot oriented guest, this was fun and enlightening for me, a character driven fella. Logan's excitement for his work across multiple fronts, genres, and endeavors is contagious. Be sure to track down his writings and his art, like that great cover on my own Reach for the Sky. Read his info below, and please give his work some love with reads and reviews. Until next time, this was 24 in 42.